My name is Marissa Stark. I currently serve as the executive director here at the Kansas City Artists Coalition, which is behind me. The Kansas City Artists Coalition is a contemporary, not-for-profit art gallery that's been in the Kansas City metropolitan area for the last 45 years. We serve artists at every level of their career, so we do that through exhibition opportunities for artists, which are critical and necessary to help build their career. We do it through professional development courses where we help to teach artists kind of the business side of their business. So helping them learn about marketing, legal, accounting, writing, how to sell their work, how to do social media. And then we also provide artist studios at low cost that are safe and affordable for artists. And as far as my career goes, I got started in the arts. In 2006, I graduated from finished school at the University of Kansas, a degree in art history. And I kind of realized pretty quickly that I didn't want to continue my education. I didn't want to go into a PhD program or anything like that. I didn't necessarily want to teach, but I did want to be around art. So I applied for a position and was accepted. My application was accepted at a commercial gallery, which is kind of your standard retail gallery space in Mission Hills in Kansas. And I spent 3 years there kind of learning the ins and outs of art selling, galleries, working with artists, installing work, learned how to light a show, create a label, wire the back of a work. I learned how to handle art, and I developed a really great rapport with the arts community and the artists. And I learned that there were a lot of holes and gaps for artists to get from their work from their studio to the gallery walls. And in 2010, I accepted a position at the Kansas City Artists Coalition as the assistant director, working in not-for-profit. So basically working to worked towards filling those holes, those gaps that I had seen that a commercial gallery or a retail gallery just really can't wrangle for a large swath of the arts community. So organizations like the Kansas City Arts Coalition and other not-for-profit arts organizations can. And so that's kind of how I got here. And once I got here, I just have never left here. So I've been here since, like I said, 2010. And I work directly with the artists in Kansas City. I work directly with arts patrons, and I also work with other arts organizations in the Kansas City area, as well as with advocacy groups that work towards legislation. I'm working with state and government agencies to help maintain funding for the arts in Kansas City and the state of Missouri.
That sounds very good.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm thinking about your daily work. What is your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of my job is connecting with the artists. I always love working with the artists especially if we have like an exhibition. I really enjoy from the moment that we accept their exhibition proposal to the day of the opening, when we get the work installed on the walls, we get everything labeled, and we have like the opening reception. Just seeing that experience, helping them work through any of the problems along the way, and making sure that they feel confident and excited at the end. And our goal here is always to have the show that artists have always dreamed of. So for us, that means we can have very conceptual shows that really aren't maybe, let's say, sellable. So they could be like an installation that, once it's done and gone, it's never seen again. Or it could be paintings on the wall. It just depends on what the artist wants to do. So that's probably my most favorite part. And then just working with the artists, even from the professional development side, and helping either, keep them from getting in a sticky situation, or just kind of helping guide them to recognize what is appropriate behavior from a collector or a gallery or even just another arts individual, and what they need to be looking out to protect themselves and then to be successful. I really enjoyed that kind of one-on-one time with artists, just connecting with them as individuals and getting to know people, and really inviting them to become a part of my arts family here in Kansas City is always just a joy. So it keeps me here.
Well, do you have a lot of interactions with other people? Like, do you speak to a lot of people?
Yeah. So we have at our galleries here, we have a pretty open floor plan. So anybody that comes through our gallery doors sees our entire staff right out the gate. So they connect with myself and the other 3 individuals who are staff members here. We can all work really directly with guests as they come in, artists or non-artists. We are on a pretty busy intersection, so we do get a lot of foot traffic. We find that a lot of people come in that maybe have never been in a gallery before or have never even been in an art space, just because they were never given that opportunity, or they never thought about it, as an option. So we do get to do a lot of educating with the community at every level, whether they're very arts educated, let's say, or art familiar, all the way down to people that don't really know much about art and aren't really taking a lot of time with it until they walk through our doors, and they're very excited to have a resource that they can come into for free almost any time that they want.
Wow, okay. Well, is there a party job that's not as enjoyable?
Yeah, well, from the administrative side, there's always the kind of mundane work that we have to do, answering emails, doing the financials. Those can just be tedious, but they're necessary. And it's certainly not my favorite part, but it's, it leads to different things. And I get to have my breaks between when people stop in, and that's good. But yeah, I mean, with every job, there's always the few things that we don't love, but they must be done.
Yeah, of course. So, what was the very first job you ever had?
The very first job I ever had,
Mm.
I worked at a brokerage company in the plaza here in Kansas City. My next door neighbor was a broker for a firm, Piper Jaffray, which managed financial lending and financial portfolios. So I worked in the office and assisted some of the brokers and their assistants, and did a lot of mailings and stuffing envelopes, and learned, just how to kind of create relationships with people, and just kind of connect, and make sure that, good time management and those kinds of things. I learned how to use a big old postage machine, which I've never done since, but if I had to, I might be able to figure it out again. But yeah, it has nothing to do with what where I've ended up, but I have a lot of learned lessons from that experience. We're good.
The next question I was gonna ask if any of that experience from your first job helped you in the future.
Oh yeah, well yeah. I mean, just kind of thinking about organization. I had to be really on top of making sure that I knew what my tasks were. I could get those kind of knocked out for the day, but also being flexible. If something came up and they needed me to do something otherwise, I needed to be able to kind of shift and do that and not kind of get spun out. And just again, learning how to communicate with individuals in an environment I was really unfamiliar with. I was really not necessarily confident in that space. I was like 15. I knew nothing about financials or financial sector. And so it was interesting. And I feel like a lot of those kinds of things helped to shape me and lead me into other jobs along the way that landed me here.
And was it difficult for you to start like working around 15, or was it just?
I had the luxury of not having to necessarily work any earlier than that. I did want to have some of my own money. So I had a summer job. So I only worked there during the summer. And then I was able to ask, it ended up being one of my next door neighbors who allowed me to work in her office with her in her community. And that was really, it was just a good opportunity for me to actually even learn how to work with other people. And how to even just get into like jobs, like how do you apply for something? How do you get a job? How do you, begin the process of figuring out what you want to do. And so, yeah, so it's been good. So that was a good process of learning kind of how to connect. And from there, I think I ended up I worked at a grocery store on the plaza, which is no longer there. And that was a great opportunity to learn, kind of how to work quickly and multitask. And then from there, I kind of ended up in more jobs that were kind of more affiliated to the arts sector. But I kind of also at those jobs learned what I didn't want to do. But I didn't want to be in corporate America. I didn't want to be in the financial industry. It just didn't. It wasn't a passion for me. Yeah, I think they're good. Good lessons, life lessons learned. But it was good.
I'm glad. What did your educational pathway look like?
Yep. So I went to grade school and high school here in Kansas City. And then I left Kansas City for 2 years. I went to a private school in northeast Iowa called Cornell College, which was an intensive private school. They did a block learning system. So you took one class for 3.5 weeks and then had a week off, which I really enjoyed the immersion and being able to really learn, kind of focus my learning on one thing. It just ended up for me not working with certain topics. I just couldn't learn a language or mathematics within 3 weeks. It was really challenging for me. Everything else I loved about it. It was a really small school, and I ended up transferring to the University of Kansas when I was going into my junior year, which was a huge shift. I went from taking, 18 hours and working 2 jobs and going to a massive university with 30,000 undergraduate students. And when I finished up there, that's kind of where I just ended my education pursuits. I didn't, like I said earlier, I wasn't really interested in going further. I didn't really see the need for me personally at that point in time to pursue a master's, or even go down the career track of like a PhD, which I could have done if I wanted to, for specifically for art history. Um, but I wasn't ready. And then I realized that financially, I wasn't able, to take on any additional debt at that point. I graduated with a chunk of student loans. I was fortunate. I did get a lot of scholarships, but I also still had to pay for a lot of stuff too. So, higher education is expensive. And if I had hindsight, I probably would have gone to an associate school or a junior college to get those first 2 years of schooling at a lesser cost. I didn't need to go to a 4-year school for that necessarily. And then I probably could have saved myself some money. But and I think it's just as useful and it's just as good a education opportunity as a 4-year university. It's just more affordable at the end of the day. So if I could have taught myself anything, I would, or if I could go back and change anything, that's what I would change. Is I would have done those first 2 years in that kind of community college environment, and then would have maybe given me more time to also figure out what I wanted to do. I was still very lost by the time that I was a junior at KU. I really didn't know what I wanted to do yet. So that was, I wonder if I'd been at a smaller school and in an associate's program, I could have maybe focused in on that a little bit earlier and better. It's just very young. I think it's crazy to ask us at 18 years old to know what to do for the rest of our lives. I love the idea of gap years. I think that was definitely not encouraged or even a conversation when I was going to school. So I think gap years are great, especially if you are trying to figure out what you want to do. I think there's some kids that do leave high school at 18 and they know what they're going to do forever, and they're ready, and that's great. But I think the majority of us don't. So, and there's no shame in that. You don't need to know at 18 what you're going to do for the rest of your life. I think you just need to be patient with yourself and figure out what you do like and how you can make that your job.
Well, what is your definition of success, or in your eyes?
Oof, a deep question. I think being successful is obviously going to be different for everyone. But for me, finding something that I am truly passionate about is my greatest success, I think, at this point in my life. I think finding a job that I truly feel like I am doing hard work, I'm doing good work, I'm doing work for my community and investing greatly in the things that I believe in, and the causes that I am advocating for. I find success in that. I believe that if and when that ever changes, then I'll need to reevaluate things. But every day I find tiny successes that keep me moving forward in advocating for the artists and the arts in our city, and making sure that it's a part of the conversation at every table, because without those people being at the table or those conversations being guided, we will not have arts in our city. And so it's those things are tiny successes that build to a big success for me. So that's kind of how I wrap it up. I think it'll be different for each person, but yeah.
Well, and what can students do now to help them prepare to get a job in this field in the future?
Yeah. So I think if you're in high school or college, finding if you want to, if you specifically to the arts, I think it's really important to, if you can, take on an internship. There are certain arts agencies and organizations that do have paid internships, so you could even use that as like a summer job. But if you can't find a paid internship, even just if you can volunteer your time, often that will help you really learn the reality of whatever you're thinking you want to get involved in, and you may discover some specific facet of that job or that organization that really resonates with you and makes you want to pursue that further. And so you're kind of doing the work before you get on to college, or you get really kind of at the end of your college career, to really figure out what the real world looks like in this potential job. And you may also discover that you get into it and you're like, this is not for me. And that's okay. But figuring it out sooner rather than later is the best. And one additional thing is, I would just lean on your community resources, your teachers. Ask them questions. They are just human beings just like you. They may have lived a little bit longer, but that just means that they have hopefully a little bit more experience and wisdom to impart on you, and maybe help you avoid mistakes that either they made or they saw happen to others or themselves along the way. And there's no reason, I like to say, to reinvent the wheel ever. We just don't have to. We can find our communities, find our peers in those communities, and potentially connect with mentors that can help share collective information with us, so we don't have to blindly walk down any avenue and then inevitably make a mistake and waste time. So I strongly encourage you to reach out to people in an industry that you're interested in, to volunteer when you can at an agency that you feel a connection to, or if you feel like there's a specific message that they are imparting that you really resonate with. Ask them how you can help and be a part of what they're doing. And just don't ever be afraid to ask questions. Most of us here in the arts and in the not-for-profit are here to answer questions. We love to be asked questions. We love to help people. That's why we're in not-for-profit. So ask those questions. There are no stupid questions. If you're in a group, somebody out there is probably thinking the exact same thing. They're just afraid to ask it. So do it for them, So those are the two things I think, especially if I look back in my kind of path forward, that I would encourage people to, would have encouraged myself to do. Don't be afraid. So yeah.
And what if there was a student who then later changed in their careers into the arts? Is there like an easier way to help them guide?
So if like they're later making a decision later in life to move into the arts, or they do a complete career shift.
Mm-hmm.
I think all the same things resonate. I know it doesn't matter where you're at in your career. I think it's easier if you do it earlier, but also if you're 18 or you're 35, you still have to ask those questions. You still have to connect with those communities. Often when you're in those industries, any industry, whether it's the arts or not for profit or not, we all kind of work, especially in Kansas City, but in my experience, almost any city, no matter how big it is, we all kind of work in similar circles. We all know each other or know of one another. We hear about this, that, and the other. And so having a foot in the door, either as an intern or a volunteer, or starting out at a lower level position than you want, can sometimes give you the foot in the door to get to the next thing, because somebody has seen your work ethic, has seen your skills, has seen your light shine, and they recognize potential for you, and they'll either write a recommendation letter for you or suggest an opportunity that you didn't know about or wasn't necessarily public yet. So those are kind of things that I just think, showing up does a lot. Just being present goes a long way, because then we get an opportunity to make those connections with one another and those individuals, and sometimes it can be part of it, whether we know it or not, or the individual knows it or not, can sometimes be a vetting process or a beginning of an interview process and lead to a job sometimes.
Well, I mean, that's all the questions I have. So thank you very much for your interest and help supporting students in becoming a businessman or a businesswoman and of the future.
Well, thank you, Edward. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for having me today. These are great questions.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Have a good one. Thanks. Bye.